Hello and welcome to this next video in our series on trunking. In previous videos we gave a broad overview of this subject, and in another video we looked at some common accessories and also some slightly less common accessories that you'll use while you're working with this material. What we're going to cover in this video, Jake?
So we're going to look at marking up and cutting the trunking, and we're going to look at two different methods of doing that.
Absolutely. So we're going to see what happens when we cut it by hand with a hacksaw, probably the most important skill you can have when it comes to working with trunking. But what power tool are we going to use, Jake?
We're going to use the Milwaukee bandsaw.
Absolutely. So I'm a little bit of a skeptic. I'm not convinced that's going to cut trunking very well. So we'll see if I'm proved right or wrong. Now, this may seem like a really simple thing to do, but it's a fundamental skill that you must develop if you're going to be working with trunking, because if you cut things incorrectly, it's going to lead to some big problems when you come to do your installation work on site. So I think we'll bring the camera in, we'll get nice and close, we'll discuss the marking up process, and then we'll show you how to cut nice and accurately.
So we've got all our tools and equipment laid out in front of us, ready to cut our trunking. We've got a tape measure so we can mark out the measurement that our trunking needs to be cut at. We've got a combination square so we can mark a line the full way around the trunking. We're going to use a fine pencil to do that. I'd recommend using a fine pencil or a scribe. What you don't want to do is use a marker pen, so you end up with a really thick line. That way you won't know where your exact measurement is to cut. We've got a block of wood here to insert in the trunking. When we put that in the vise, that will stop the trunking from crushing. In this vise we've got some magnetic soft jaws to attach onto our vise, again to stop us damaging the trunking while it's in the vise. We've then got our 24 teeth per inch hacksaw to cut the trunking, the file for when we're done to get rid of the sharp edges, and we've got the zinc galvanising spray to put that galvanising finish back on once we're done. Okay
then, Jake, so we've said we're going to cut this piece of trunking down, but why do we need to? Can't we just volley it in at the length that it is?
Well, a length of trunking comes at 3 metres. We're not going to have every installation where we need exactly 3 metres of trunking and that's it, so we need to understand how to cut that down. Yeah, that makes sense, and thanks for verifying the standard length of trunking is 3 metres, which may come in handy if you're sitting in a small classroom at a computer being asked multiple choice questions in a timed environment. That's 3 metres, 3 metres, 3 metres. Of course, some manufacturers do it at slightly different lengths, but that is the standard value. So let's have a look at this then, Jake. So how are we going to start doing this? Yep, so I'm going to cut this piece of trunking at 700 millimetres.
700 millimetres.
Yep.
Again, might that be handy in certain circumstances with certain assessments?
Yep, definitely.
Okay, very good. So hopefully all the learners are taking note at this point. Now, Jake, you said you were going to cut this at 700 millimetres, and yet we've got a 70 on our tape measure there. So why is that?
That's right. So 700 millimetres or 70 centimetres, that's 100 millimetres per 10 centimetres.
Excellent. So that makes sense. So 10 mil per centimetre gives us 700 mil. Right, that's great. So we're finished with the tape measure. We'll pop that down and we'll start with the next tool.
So I've marked my line at 70 centimetres or 700 millimetres. I've got my combination square. I'm now going to continue that line the entire way around the trunking.
Okay, and using the combi square obviously means that that's going to be at 90 degrees on the trunking there, yeah?
Yeah.
Very good. So flipping the trunking over, and obviously from that side you can then see the mark that you're making and just carrying it onto the other side. Very nice. And now we'll mark the third side. Nice that you even marked up those little tiny nibs there. Again, that's important. Very good. And then we're just going to mark up the back face of this. And there we've got one marked up piece of trunking. So we should have a line all the way around that meets up with itself.
There we go.
Happy days. Okay, so time to start thinking about doing some cutting.
So I'm now going to insert the block of wood into the trunking before we put it into the vise.
And are you taking that just past the mark there, Joe?
I'm going to take it just past my mark, that's right, yeah.
So we're not going to be cutting through the wood when we do this. We've gone just beyond where we're going to be cutting. That makes sense.
So now that we've got our block of wood in the trunking, I'm going to take that and insert it into the vise.
And I noticed that as you're putting this into the vise here, Jake, you're actually being very careful to make sure that those jaws are gripping onto the timber on the inside and not that lip of the trunking. Why is that?
Yeah, that's right, and that's so we don't crush the trunking at all, especially if we catch it on one of these lips, that's going to push that lip right in.
Happy days. Okay, so that's nice and securely mounted in the vise.
Yeah.
So now we're ready to start thinking about doing some cutting.
So now that the trunking's in the vise, ready to cut, I'm going to take my hacksaw and start cutting the trunking.
Okay, so any information about this hacksaw blade here, Jake, in particular?
Yeah, so we've mentioned in a previous video, this is 24 teeth per inch. It's a bimetal blade.
Very nice. And if we're getting really nice and close there, you can see that actually those teeth, they kind of point forwards, don't they? They're not symmetrical. They do point in a forward direction.
That's right, yeah. So they cut on the forward stroke, so it's important to only apply pressure going forward and not when you're coming backwards.
Yeah, because if you do it pulling backwards, you're going to wreck your hacksaw blade.
Yeah.
Even worse than this one is already. This is already in a bit of a state, so we'll forgive Jake if this isn't the neatest cut he ever does, but he can only work with the tools he's given. So we're going to put that onto our line now, Jake. And any tips on getting this nice and straight? And why are we not just cutting through in a oner here?
Yeah, so I'm going to cut one side at a time. So I'm going to cut this side first. Once I'm fully through this side, I'm going to flip the trunking in the vise, cut the back side and so on. The reason I'm not going to cut through all sides at once is if you're not familiar with cutting trunking, you feel it's a strong point of yours, this is really important to just do one side at once. It's much easier to keep your hacksaw straight.
Absolutely, yeah. I always used to say to my learners, if you start straight, you'll finish straight. If you start wonky, you'll finish wonky. And of course, we want to keep this blade here, we want to keep that cut at a nice shallow angle to the metal so we don't get that dreadful screeching sound as we're cutting through this at a right angle.
So I'm just going to start off with slow strokes till I get going. And as we said, Joe, just keeping that shallow angle. It's, those back teeth create that groove there. Yep. So it's helps your hacksaw stay straight. Keeps you guided really.
Excellent.
So that's one side cut through. I'll flip that now and continue. Nice.
Excellent, so we just flipped that through 90 degrees and now we're going to cut through this back edge. Of course, as you get a little bit more experienced at this, you'll be able to cut through this perhaps in a oner. Maybe you'll be able to just move your hacksaw around instead of moving the trunking around in every case. However, we are aiming to help people who perhaps aren't as familiar with trunking as they could be, and so perhaps they're just starting out in terms of their skills on this type of material. And that is a nice neat cut, so we've got that last bit off there. It's always a struggle, but we managed to get that off without causing any kind of damage or denting to the trunking there, which is absolutely fantastic. Now at this point, because we're starting to handle the trunking with a cut edge now, that edge will be super sharp, so before we do anything else we're going to pop some gloves on to make sure that we don't end up injuring ourselves.
So we've got our piece of trunking cut. I'm going to go ahead and file that and remove any sharp edges now. Now we'll go ahead and take our zinc galvanising spray and spray this cut edge up. So before I do that, I've got my gloves and goggles on, I'm going to put my mask on.
That's absolutely excellent work, because obviously we don't want to be inhaling these fumes here because they're pretty nasty, but an essential bit of work now. Very good, and again, one of those situations where less is more, so we're not looking to be tagging up the trunking with your graffiti there, we're just looking for that nice spray up to make sure that there's no cut edges left on display there. That is top work, Jake, well done. Okay, so this is the end of trunking that Jake just did a really nice, neat job of showing us how to mark up accurately, how to cut it nice and square, and then how to treat it after the cut to make sure that we don't end up with any sharp edges or rust forming on there at all. So that is really the main point of this video covered, but now it's time to close the video out with with a little bit of fun. So we're going to have a go with the Milwaukee portable bandsaw, and we're going to see just exactly if this is any good for cutting through trunking. So arm yourself, Jake. I am a little bit of a cynic here. I'm not convinced that this is such a great bit of kit, but we're going to see if I'm wrong. So we've got that guard at the back pressed up nice and hard against the trunking.
Yeah.
On you go, Jake. Well, it's definitely quick. Okay, it's definitely quick.
Much quicker.
So let's have a look. It's quick, it's noisy. Now, in terms of squareness, we think maybe a little bit of practice may be in order. So we've drifted from the line a little bit there, but I think this is only the third time you've ever used this bit of kit, Jake. Yeah. So we're going to let you off with that, and we'll suggest that with a bit more practice, it certainly is a lot quicker. So we'll see how that unfolds as a part of the industry. Happy days. So in this video, we've seen how to develop some of those absolutely fundamental skills that you must have if you're going to be working with metal trunking. Jake's shown us how to measure up nice and accurately, he's shown us how to cut nice and square, and he's also shown us how to treat that cut edge afterwards to make sure that it isn't prone to rust and to make sure there's no sharp edges that could damage our cable. So thank you very much for joining us again, Jake. Really good to have you with us. But of course, there's plenty more content to come in this series, so stay tuned for that over the coming weeks as we feed that out to you. But as always, we want to hear from you, the viewer. So do you have any questions or comments about what we've done in this video? Maybe you disagree with some of the methods that we've used. Maybe you've got a top tip or a really nice tool that helps you with your trunking installations that you'd like to share with us. Whatever those questions, whatever those thoughts, please leave them in the comments section below. And of course, Jake will get back to all of those for you. But as always, all that remains in this video is to say,
thank you very much for watching.
Again, that is my line.